Hello, I'm Penny Thornton and I'm talking astrology. On this video, I'm going to be talking about the new moon in Capricorn on the 23rd of December, 2022. And of course, a whole lot of other things going on, which I shall go through with you as well. Now, we need to remind ourselves that we never ever see the new moon, which is sad. It's just taking place in a shadow, we can't see it. But by the time we get to Christmas Day, and certainly Christmas night, we'll be looking at that little sickle in the sky. And it will remind us that it is new moon time, and the phase of the new moon, it goes from the 23rd of December through to the 6th of January, when it will be a full moon. So this, this theme of new beginnings, new starts, new chapters really doesn't just happen on the 23rd of December. It extends through that 2-week period. And I'm going to be talking a little bit more about that when I get to my conclusion. Now, the other thing I want to say about this new moon is that it is a new beginning in terms of the events that happen at this time, and their denouement, or their conclusion, in about 6 months' time on July the 3rd, when there is a full moon in Capricorn. So you can think to yourself, the things that happened around Christmas, the plans you made, the things you decided, maybe even someone you met in this Christmas holiday period, as something that will conclude that in about 6 months' time. Now, there are other things about this new moon, which I'm going to take you through once we have a look at the chart. But I think it's safe to say that after this particular year, which has been so difficult, we need to really remind ourselves that every month we get a new moon and a full moon. And on the new moon, it is always appropriate to make some kind of new start. It gives us a beautiful rhythm to life, and it reminds us in a way that nothing lasts forever. There is always new things coming into our lives. Other thing I just want to mention at this point is my year aheads, which I know a lot of you love, which are on astrolutely.com, will be ready by the very end of December. And that will give you quite a good take on what these next 12 months hold in store, sign by sign. So let's move to our chart and see this new moon, where it's placed, and all the other things that are going on around it at the time. I set this new moon from the perspective of Dublin, and one of the reasons I did that was because I felt we could see it nice and clearly here, but also I've got a lot of friends who live in Ireland, and particularly in Dublin, and it sort of made me think this is a time when we think of old friends, people we've known, maybe even people we've lost touch with, and I thought to myself, it would be nice to address that and set it from Dublin. I don't think we've done that before. So there's our new moon in the sort of 10 o'clock position on our clock face. And as you can see, if you look around the circle at all the planets, and remember the nodal axis, that's the little omega signs, they're not planets, so they don't count. But what we're seeing here is a bowl shape. We've had a lot of bowl shapes, the planets falling into a particular pattern, and bundle shapes during the course of this past year. And so this reminds us too that babies that are being born at this time will be born with a bundle shape. And in fact, they might be born with a singleton planet, the moon, in fact, outside that bowl shape, which then puts a great focus on the moon. So all things to do with creativity and imagination, feelings, that becomes a most important planet through which all the others are expressed. And I often say with a bowl shaping, these people feel they have a mission in life, and we can just wrap that up briefly and say babies born at this time will have much to offer life. Their experience they will want to offer out to others. So if we also look at the fact that we've got the new moon up in that 10 o'clock position, if we look at the 5 o'clock position, we've got Mars in Gemini. And I mean, Mars, it has been in Gemini for many months now, and it's going to stay or move through the sign until late March. So we've got this strong concentration, if we look at the rim of the bowl, so to speak. In this case, the sun and the moon and Mars also being important to this shaping. So we continue a little bit with that theme that we had on the full moon in Gemini, because Mars played into that. And it's a time of great energy, a very dynamic period of the year, but it's also very conflict-ridden. And I don't think you need me to tell you why. All those conflicts and controversy particularly strong around that period of December. But we can also look at the fact that we've got Venus in Capricorn, Mercury in Capricorn, and Pluto in Capricorn. And these are going to play into our Christmas program, so to speak, as we go through that period just before Christmas and after it. Because both Mercury and Venus will be trining Uranus during that period. And Uranus is the planet of change and the unexpected. And even though these two planets will be harmoniously angled to Uranus on the 17th and the 22nd, respectively, we've got to remember that if you put Mercury and Venus in the same room with Uranus, you've got a lot of surprises and maybe a lot of change and a lot of fireworks. So situations may go up in smoke if they're not handled well. On the other hand, you may start a fire burning, which sounds kind of good, especially in the context of a relationship and romance. Now, also during this period, if we look down towards the kind of 7 o'clock position, we'll see Jupiter and Neptune quite close. There's still this sense that Jupiter and Neptune are in sympathy, although now with Jupiter having moved into, well, will be moving into Aries just before the new moon, there is this case that it's in what we call disassociated signs. Neptune is in one sign, Pisces, Jupiter is in the other, and that does give less of a combined effect. Nonetheless, I still think there's a spirit of compassion here. There's some things here in that say, yes, well, maybe things are a bit chaotic and confusing, but somehow there is a strong sense of spiritual kind of, I don't like that word energy, but it's a good one to use. We've got plenty of that when we have Jupiter and Neptune combined. But the important thing, just before the new moon, in fact, the day before a couple of days before the new moon, Jupiter heads into Aries, and it's going to work its way through the sign of Aries all the way through until the middle of May 2023. Now, obviously, that's going to be particularly important for Arians, but also significant for Librans and Capricorns and Cancerians. Now, I've gone into this in quite some detail in my year ahead, so I'm not going to take a lot of time talking about what this means for the individual signs on this particular video. But we remember the principle of Jupiter, which is expansion. It's about growth. It's also about joy, but it's about inflation too. And when we think about what inflation does, we know we've got galloping inflation in terms of finances, and sometimes Jupiter can inflate all sorts of problems. And I think we have to remind ourselves when we get that sense of Jupiter exuberance in our lives that we have to be careful not to go over the top. All things in moderation is a mantra when it comes to anything Jupiterian. And within days of Jupiter heading into Aries, the sun is going to square Jupiter. In fact, the new moon itself is squaring Jupiter. And that is a real feel-good factor, although at the same time, we cannot forget it's going to expand situations that aren't good either. You know, Jupiter is a principle of expansion. That doesn't mean it's always good expansion, good growth. It can be something that we feel we don't like at all, and we need to kind of bear that in mind. Now, another thing that's going on at this particular time, just after Christmas, is that we've got Mercury turning retrograde. Mercury, in fact, does turn retrograde on the 29th of December. It won't have reached Pluto by then. It's going to do that much later on, when we're into next year. But nonetheless, just before Mercury turns retrograde, it's in its stationary period, which probably covers that time a little bit before Christmas, during the Christmas period, and well on into the new year. You have to be aware that anything to do with Mercury, transport, transportation, travel, communications, dialogues, commerce, all those kind of things, they go into a different gear when Mercury is retrograde. And of course, if you think about this time of year, especially in the Northern Hemisphere, we get a lot of weather. Sometimes it's snow, it's ice, it's rain, it's wind, it's, not very pleasant. Maybe in the Southern Hemisphere, you've got too much heat and you've got all those things going on. And that can, of course, interfere with our travel plans, even if there's nothing to complain about where we are. People could be coming from places where there is weather, and therefore they're delayed or there are problems. So I would say in that run-up to Christmas, keep checking timetables, checking the weather, making sure everyone's on the same page, because as soon as Mercury is getting into its Mercury retrograde gear, a lot of things tend to get missed, delayed, and you get detoured. It doesn't always have to be bad, of course. On a retrograde Mercury, you often take nostalgic journeys. And of course, a lot of us will be connecting with old friends and family during the course of the next couple of weeks. And that's also a trip into the past, isn't it? Which can be, of course, extremely welcome. But it's worth, as I said, just bearing that in mind as we come towards Christmas, get away early. On New Year's Eve, and I may be talking about this a little bit more on my next video, which will be the full moon in Cancer, Venus and Pluto will be conjunct. And that means from Christmas Day onwards, Venus and Pluto will be drawing closer together. This is a very passionate coupling. And especially if you have planets towards the end of your sign, and especially if you're Cancer, Capricorn, or Aries, or Libra, and you're born towards the end of your sign, that means round about the 18th, 19th of your month, then Venus and Pluto will play into this holiday period. We're talking about passion, and passion can be fabulous when it's directed in the right way, but it can be dangerous if it's not. And I think the idea of it at peak on New Year's Eve means there are going to be a lot of passionate declarations going on around that period of time. We have to wait to see quite how that translates in your particular life. But if we put these two planets together, we get love and we get transformation. We can also get money, because Venus has a lot to do with money as well, so maybe transformation money-wise as well. Let's come back to me again, and what I want to do now is take us through sign by sign, so we have some idea what this new moon may mean for us, and sort of the kind of things we might be thinking about. Because if we make conscious the things we know about astrology, it means we're working with them instead of everything kind of flying at us and us not really being able to make the most of them. So if we start off with Capricorn, of course, this new moon is in your sign. And if you've got Capricorn rising, the new moon will be in your first house. And when we've got a new moon in our sign or in the first house, then it's about us. It's about what we want, who we are, where we're going, what we want to do, and the things that matter to us personally. Now, the new moon is, as I said, a time of new beginnings. So consciously, it might be a good time to really think about your life and what needs freshening up to give it a feel that it has a new kind of sparkle to it. We might also think of that in terms of us, we ourselves, the face, the image we see in the mirror. Could our image do with a bit of a polish up? Have we got a bit stale? Do we need to find some new dimension of ourselves? Do we need to even change our appearance in some way, maybe get a haircut or do something with a color or just something, get outfits that bring out something different in us, because it's good to keep reinventing ourselves. We don't have to do anything amazing, but the idea that you do get a fresh look also sends a lot of kind of messages out there that there are new starts in process. I think, too, a lot of the time we wait around for other people to give us an opportunity or to tell us what they want to do, and then we react to that. But with a new moon, this is your show, your shout, you're in there. So you start telling everyone else what you want to do, what plans you may have. And I think just in general, this new moon in Capricorn, which is a very material earth kind of earthy sign, that a lot of things that amount to new starts have to do with our material world, things to do with money, with property, things that are very real, not airy-fairy things, but things that have a real tangible reality. So you want to make things real at this time, and this is particularly so for Capricorn. Now, if we come to the opposite sign and we look at Cancer, this new moon is taking place in the area of relationships. And this is the same if you have Cancer rising, you'll have Capricorn setting the new moon in your 7th house. So this is about new starts relationship-wise. And there are so many ways this can manifest. It can be that, like all relationships, especially close relationships like marriage, live-in relationships, we get a little bit stale, don't we? We get a little bit comfortable in our relationship. And that's bad because we stop paying attention. We stopped giving some energy to our relationships. And this new moon is all about taking a look and seeing what new starts need to be made in a relationship to give it a lot more life, to help it grow. Remember that new moon is squaring Jupiter, so growth is assured. Yes, I know inflation is insured as well, but I like the idea of such a positive start that can grow. It can also symbolize a new relationship beginning. That can be a working relationship. It can be a friendship even, but probably what we're looking at more than anything is a new partnership. It can be a business partnership, as I just said, but really and truly things to do with you and another person for a personal or a romantic relationship is what we're looking at. And remember, this cycle of the new moon takes us through until about the 6th of January. So there's lots of opportunity to meet new people or to make new connections that will grow during the course of, well, I pointed out this 6-month cycle that's associated with this. It may not take 6 months, it may take that 3-month period to prove whether you've got a really good relationship on your hands or whether it's not quite what you thought it was, but the 6-month period is also going to be significant one way or another. I think too, with new moons, we sort of want to change our kind of way of dealing with other people. So often for lots of us, when we think about what lockdown was like, how we didn't get out a lot, and I think a lot of us have lost our social skills. We might even feel a little bit awkward when we get out there. We sort of lost our social bearings. So this new moment is about just getting on with it, just getting out there. Because even if it's not with the intention of forming a very close one-on-one relationship, at least it's getting out to meet people and to feel that our world is widening. Another thing I think associated with this new moon is that it can be a signal of an engagement or a wedding. And remember, we've also got Venus and Pluto playing into this period of time through Christmas. So that might be exactly why we're looking at that kind of thing. So if we come to Libra, for Libra, this new moon is in the 4th house. And the 4th house, it's the roots of life. So it's your family. It's the place where you live. It's where everything begins in a way. It's your anchor. It's your sanctuary. So a new moon here says something new coming into this whole area of life on a kind of, mundane level, so to speak, a reality level. It may be that you've got new people coming into the family, whether that's by birth or whether it's by marriage, or just somebody new coming to live or share the family space. But it can also mean a new home or a new kind of start within the home, which may mean renovation, decoration, all that kind of thing. And in as much as I said to Capricorn and a 1st house new moon, it's kind of getting a new image that also sends messages out to other people that things are changing here. And when we do something new to our home, we're also bringing in a new element that makes it fresh. And that new start on home territory can really be a very kind of profound one in many ways, because when you think about it, the seeds that you plant in this Christmas, New Year period could grow into something beautiful. And as I said, this may apply to new babies coming into the family at some point, or maybe new babies absolutely arriving, new partners, all those kind of things bring a whole new element into the family circle and into the home life. For Aries, it's quite the reverse. It's the 10th house that has this new moon. And of course, if you've got Aries rising, you'll have that new moon at the top of your chart or within that region. So we think about your role in life when we're looking at the 10th house and you out in the world. If the ascendant and the 1st house is about, this is how I look, this is who I am, this is my personality, this is what greets everybody, we have an extension of that. We're kind of who we want to be, what role we take on in life out in the world. So the new moon here says there's a new role, or there's something different coming into this area of your life. It can be your career. So maybe you already know you're going to be taking on a new job in the new year, or there are going to be discussions about where you go from here with a job, and it's going to be a whole new chapter for you. But it may be something that you know nothing about, so that it comes as a surprise, some kind of offer, some kind of new development, which gives you a new image. I think, and I didn't mention this when I talked briefly about Jupiter in Aries, but it's appropriate here while I'm talking to you, Aries, that just in general, it's about entrepreneurship, it's about enterprise, it's about initiating pioneering moves. So this idea, this new moon linked into those kind of aspects of life, that it suggests this is a very good time to go in a new direction, whatever that means for you, whether it's career related, personally related, or, whichever way you can think of that. Now, of course, sometimes a new moon here means this is a new job that you don't know about yet. And in fact, another job has to go before that. But I think Aries, particularly with Jupiter in your sign for the next 5 months, you're going to have lots of opportunities. And it really does give you a chance to be in the driver's seat of life. And if there's one place Aries likes to be, it's the driver's seat. So let's move to our next group, the mutable group. And let's come to Sagittarius first of all. Capricorn is your next door neighbor. And on the wheel of the houses, that means it's the 2nd house. And the 2nd house is the area of finance and self-worth. And these two things very much linked. When we feel good about ourselves and we feel people value us, our ability to negotiate our financial matters is stronger too. But of course, it can be the other way around. And if we have more money, we feel better about ourselves. So it's a bit of a two-way street, this one. But the new moon does suggest a new source of income or a new way to deal with financial matters. Either of these would be welcome to a lot of Sagittarians. I mean, it's always a lovely prospect to think you're going to have a new source of income. That's great. But if you're struggling financially, and lots of people are at the moment, the idea that there are new solutions to these matters is really welcome too. And often I think once we negotiate and make a new kind of arrangement, whether that's with banks and lending institutions, or whether it's with our employers or with our employees, that's something that can grow. Remember, this new moon is square Jupiter in a good way. And I would certainly think the actions that you take around this new moon, and of course during the course of the next 2 weeks, which are linked to your income and to your financial position, which will also, of course, include property matters, these are going to be decisions that are good, and they will help your situation to grow. Coming back a little bit here about self-esteem as well, it's very much tied into how people treat us, which is why when we've got a bad relationship, our self-esteem goes down. We don't feel confident. We don't really feel full of, light. And what we need to remember, that it all starts with us, and that if we can find things about ourselves that we absolutely know are good, are full of value, and we focus on those things that we know we have and we know we can control, that does tend to banish that terrible sense that certain people don't appreciate us. So this new moon is a new start in terms of your value, the value other people place upon you, the value you have upon yourself, and of course finances as well. Now, if we come to Gemini, the opposite sign, we've got this new moon in the 8th house. Now, we're still talking money here, but in a slightly different way. In the 8th house, we get things that we didn't expect. It's like they were unseen. Now, this is the area of inheritances and settlements, things like that. And so that it's money that comes to us from a different source. It can also be money that comes to us from a partner, because the 8th house is an extension of the 7th house, which is all about partnership. Hence, we look at divorce settlements. But we also look at things like a partner earning money or doing well financially also benefits us. It's certainly a good period, the time from the new moon through to the full moon of the 6th of January, to talk money with the money people. Whether that means banks and lending institutions and credit card companies, or whether it is with a view to perhaps looking at your investments. If you're, fortunate enough to be able to have investments, then it's a very, very good time to really get things moving in a good direction. And the investments that you make now are probably going to grow, because we have that theme of Jupiter playing in there. But this area is a little bit more than just finance, in as much as with Sagittarius and the 2nd house, we talked about feelings. We talked about other people's opinion of us having a bearing upon our self-esteem. In the 8th house, we go a little bit deeper. It's that whole area of intimacy. And when we are intimate with people and we have opened the door to intimacy, it's very enriching. See how we put these words together. So this new moon could indicate a new intimate relationship beginning, or a new start for an existing intimate relationship. Either way, this idea of bringing the new into this area of life is going to refresh it, give it light, and of course, to mention it again, with Jupiter in there as well, helping it to grow and expand. For Pisces, this new moon is in the 11th house, the area of group consciousness, things to do with collaboration and friendship. It's a very misunderstood area sometimes, because I think people sort of don't quite know what to do with it, but no man is an island, and it is important to be part of a community, part of a group at times, and we certainly know if we work in business, when we're working as a team, we can get a lot more done. And the same thing here, when you combine with friends to, create a specific event, or you've got some other project, it can be not just enjoyable, but it can really grow into something that becomes a very important part of our lives. The idea of group consciousness, I think, is important too, because we do live our lives very much from our own perspective, and we look out on life from our two eyes looking at the world. And so it is very personal and it is very subjective. I think sometimes if we could take ourselves out of there and look at the world from a different point of view, and we can get other people's take on us, the situations in our world, it's very, very beneficial. So the new moon could indicate a new collaboration, a new enterprise, something that's going to happen over the course of the next couple of weeks, or you can set in motion so that it will happen during the course of next year. It may also be the birth or development of a new friendship. And I always say that, and you hear other people say it, oh, I'm married to my best friend. But I think above and beyond that, the idea of a one-on-one relationship, when you think of yourselves as a team, so you've got a team goal, it makes the relationship stronger. It gives you something to work towards. And I think this new moon helps you find team spirit anywhere you are seeking it. For Virgos, then this new moon is in the 5th house, a very creative area of the horoscope. I mean, if it's, we, or the group ethos in the 11th, it's all about me in the 5th house, but not in quite the same way as the 1st house, which is appearance and the influence we have on the situations in our life. It's more about the creative, the inner self, the inner child, the creative aspect of ourselves, what we can throw ourselves into in a creative way. Now, of course, we can do that procreatively as well. And so this might be all about starting a new kind of family. Maybe there's a new baby on the way, or maybe you're thinking about it. And this might be a very good time to really put ideas into action. Remember, this area of the chart has a lot to do with the heart as well. And when we think about romance, what brings two people together in that way, the 5th house is all about coming together for the purposes of procreation. So that's in there as well. But there are many, many other ways to think about creativity. After all, this is a period when a lot of us are involved in nativity plays and carol concerts and all sorts of other things that go along with the Christmas kind of celebrations. And that can be very creative as well. So we could be looking at a new creative enterprise, and perhaps during the course of these next 2 weeks, something that you come up with yourself and think, you know what, I'd like to get involved with this. I'd like to do this. I think this is going to please my heart. I'm going to have a heartwarming experience. But of course, we could be looking at a new romance beginning in these next couple of weeks. And again, don't we have the perfect time to meet people and to feel like starting over in some way? And romance is a great way to do that. It's a very joyful area of the horoscope. I love it when we have 5th house transits, because we plug into our own creative inner self, and that makes us feel joyful. And on top of that, there can be some very good events that happen. We're coming to our last group now, and we're going to start with Scorpio. Now, Scorpio, your new moon, or the new moon, is taking place in the 3rd house. So this is one of the areas of kind of connection. These mutable houses are what I call the seeking houses. This is where we go and seek something. We seek to find out things. We seek to expand our knowledge. We're looking to exchange ideas. And often with the 3rd house, we're sort of very into our neighborhood events. Again, what a perfect time. Maybe you've already got in your schedule that you're going to be doing something in your neighborhood. Maybe there are neighborhood events and you're going to be very much part of them. But I think it's also about communication. And this is a time we do reach out and talk to people we haven't spoken to for a while. We get in touch with people who are far away, and we sort of stretch out and exchange information and feelings. And that's a good thing. It makes us feel connected to the rest of our world, our small world, and maybe in a way, a newer world. So there is something new starting here. And I think often if we have enough time and we think about starting a new project or learning something that's going to add to our bank of knowledge or even our skills, what a good idea that can be. Any which way we start doing something new is good for our brains, but it can also turn out to be the start of something much bigger. And I'm reminded here, which is maybe something you need to remind yourself during this next couple of weeks, is the idea that the reason you think you're going somewhere is not the reason you're going. And that might turn out to be extremely applicable during this period of time. Remember too, Mercury will be turning retrograde on the 29th. So if you've got lots of travel planned, it will be especially important to keep checking weather and all of the things that I said just a little bit earlier on. I think too, this area has a lot to do with social media and the giving and receiving of information. So there could be a piece of new information coming your way that's going to be extremely important. If we look now at Taurus, then for you, Taurus, the new moon is in the 9th house. One of my favorite areas of the horoscope. In the 9th house, we travel. We look at the wider world. We expand our world. We seek things that are beyond the end of our nose. So this might just simply say, this is a period where you're going to be traveling far and wide. Maybe you are on a really long journey. Maybe you're going to celebrate Christmas in another part of the world. That would certainly fit this new moon. But it may be too that you're connecting with people who are in different parts of the world, whether you're, still in your home territory, but you're meeting people who come from all over the world. It's a nice connection. In the 9th house, we learn so much about the rest of the world, things we didn't know. We explore new and distant territory. And this new moon is really emphasizing that. It's also a very good time to have a look at the things that really, really fascinate you in terms of maybe ancient knowledge. History has a part to play in this area of the chart. So looking into things of sort of global importance, things about other countries, maybe even academic studies, things like this. When we're in the 9th house, that's where our heads are at. And of course, sometimes, as I said, that's where our whole selves are because we've traveled away from our normal position. It is a good plan, I think, when we've got a new moon in this area, to think about how we can expand our world. And that can be in many areas, can't it? It can be emotionally, it can be mentally, intellectually, and it can be sort of physically as well. And I think as we extend ourselves, we also see our lives in a different perspective. It helps us see things that we're perhaps too close to. And so we can't see the wood for the trees. In the 9th house, we get a bigger look at it. And it might be a good thing just to remind yourself as we go through Christmas period and beyond, to take a much more distant perspective on things. Distance yourself from them, and you'll be amazed what different solutions you come up with. So here we are, the last two signs. We have Aquarius. So for you, this new moon is taking place in the 12th house. And you've got quite a few planets in that 12th house. You've got Mercury and Venus in there as well, and also Pluto, although Pluto is getting very, very near entering Aquarius. So that's something else I'm going to be talking about in my year ahead. But the 12th house is like the other mutable houses, that's 9th, 3rd, 6th, and 12th, are what I call seeking houses. You're always seeking to find something in the 12th house. And I don't mean looking for your lost earring, although I could. What I mean is that you're really looking for meaning. You're looking for something bigger than yourself. If in the 9th house we're there on the world stage and we're going to different countries and, looking at the big wide world, in the 12th house, we're looking at the context in which we exist, probably from a very spiritual perspective. So this new moon has a lot to do with a spiritual reboot. And if you're interested in the spiritual things of life, then this is a very, very good time to take some new aspect, something you don't know about, or a new practice that you have not yet done, because this is going to enrich you spiritually. Now, sometimes this area of the horoscope is about taking yourself away from the hurly-burly of life. And so you are more of a recluse. You are seeking to find inspiration and all sorts of sanctuary too, there's a good word, in the silence of yourself, or in places where you are away from the bright light, so to speak. And that can really nurture your spiritual self. And the 12th house is coming to the end of a cycle before a new beginning, which of course will happen with the new moon in Aquarius, which will happen towards the end of January. So we're thinking about wrapping things up. We're thinking about processing things, especially in an emotional way. It's been one hell of a year, and I don't think anyone has got through it without experiencing something that's been very, very difficult. And maybe in the process, we feel we've left a few loose ends and a few things that aren't resolved with other people. It's a very, very good idea in this new moon period to try to resolve those things, to dissolve them. And so that you've, snipped those loose ends, ready to start your new cycle later on in January. Also, I think health is important here. And when we've got the sun moving through the 12th house, which you do, we need to pay more attention. That can be dental health, mental health, physical health. So it's a good idea to get all your checkups done. And also, I talked about a new practice a little while ago. And I think the idea of taking up yoga or meditation, Tai Chi, can be anything that sort of brings together mind, body, and spirit, because that really, really replenishes you. And so that new moon is an encouragement to do those sort of practices. Last but not least, we're looking at Leo. Oh, Leo, never last, always first, always center stage. But on this occasion, we are talking about this new moon in your 6th house. Now, the 6th house is an area where we seek to be of purpose. Remember these houses being seeking houses. And when we feel we're of purpose, it's a good feeling. And it's especially good when we've done something for other people, for another person. Then it makes us feel good that they've benefited from the actions that we've taken. It's a house of service. So we perform a service for others. Now, there's all sorts of ways you can perform a service. I mean, just take Christmas itself, when we may put together a Christmas celebration for others in whatever way. That's a service. It's an act of service. And from that, others take pleasure. But of course, we can do it in much more dramatic ways. We can actually join organizations that help other people. And so many people need help at Christmas. So that idea of being of service to others is very rewarding. And if you're listening to me, Leo, and you're thinking about that, you're thinking about what's happening in other people's lives around the Christmas period, how good to get involved with those kind of services and give yourself, make an effort, if you like, that someone else can benefit from. But this is also an area of health, because this is about all sorts of systems by which your life runs. We have daily systems, the pattern of our daily lives, breakfast, off to work, kids to school, all those things that give our daily life a shape. Well, probably a new moon says, you know, there's going to be a different kind of routine going on from now on. And it's a good thing. We need to freshen up our routines, make them different, change it up. And that gives them much more dynamism. But we also need to look at our health system so that it's a very good plan to get a health check, an annual MOT, so to speak, and also good to consider new treatments for old and chronic conditions. Often we think we've tried everything to sort a condition out, but actually it's the new one that does it. And I think generally this new moon is a signal to get fitter, healthier, stronger, and better. And of course, at Christmas time, maybe that's not what we think of with all the treats that are around. But nevertheless, we've still got, you know, a little while longer after Christmas to think about, you know, I need to have a new regime, a new system in my life so that I function better as a person and my life functions better. A new routine, a new system. So I think that just about takes me all the way through the zodiac. And I'm coming now really to my conclusion. And of course, it is all about Christmas. And I think it's a wonderful time of year if your life is in good shape. If you've got a happy relationship, if you've not got any money worries, if nothing in your life is particularly challenging, then Christmas can be fabulous. And all those kind of commercials, you know, make us feel happy and joyful and look forward to the season. And the same when we're out and about and we're in the supermarket and we've got all those Christmas music playing. It's okay to begin with, isn't it? But after a while, it's like, can you turn that off now? So Christmas is wonderful if you're feeling Christmassy, but it's not wonderful if you aren't. And I think a lot of us this year aren't quite in the mood for Christmas. The thing to remember is that it's one day, one period of a whole year. And there are so many other days to come in the next year before another Christmas where life can change. And I think that's really important. When things aren't going right, we think they'll never go right. For some reason, we think we're kind of stuck in a groove and it'll just go on repeating itself. Well, it won't. All things change. That may be a cliche, but the reason it's a cliche is that it's true. And I've lived long enough to know that it's true. And I think if we can bear in mind that although this Christmas may not be the Christmas we want it to be for one reason or another, there will be more in the future that will be. And maybe sometimes going through a difficult time at a time of year when we'd like to be happy is a big learning curve for us. We dig deep to find the resources with which to get through this period. And once out the other side of it, we come away stronger and better. There's also something else I'd like to think about at this period of time, and that is really in relation to this idea of the new moon in Capricorn, and it is to plant a seed. We do things at new moon or around that waxing period that, if we consciously connect to them, can mean that a new start is made somewhere in our life. We could, of course, just leave it up to fate or the cosmos or whatever, however you want to think of that, and think, oh, something new just happened. But really and truly, there is a great connection between the things we do in the external world quite deliberately that sends a powerful message to our psyche, and that in turn changes the energy and dynamics around us in our lives. It's magic. Yes, it is a sort of magic, but everybody can do it. And this idea that I'm going to recommend is this taking of a seed. We can all buy or get a packet of seeds, or even maybe we have our own seeds from the garden. We need a little pot and just put a seed in it, nurture it, look after it in this new moon phase. And at some point that will start a shoot. We've nurtured something and it's growing. And that message is going straight to our psyches, that new starts can be made, and the seeds that we plant at this time in different areas of our lives can grow into strong and beautiful plants. And in turn, the act of planting, the act of that action coming into our psyche means that also we are encouraging new things, new opportunities to come towards us. And I think that's a really, really positive message at this time of year. So I'll be doing one more video this year. That'll be in a couple of weeks' time. But in the meantime, I'd like to wish you all a very, very happy Christmas.